Dave and Mike, I thought that what we might do is, in the interest of getting the chief and deputy chief in their input as quickly as possible into the meeting, and then give them the opportunity to either leave, but if we have their input, that might allow for more informed public comment. So if it's okay with everybody, we just hear from them, and then we could have our public comment session after their presentation. And as I understand it, were we going to get somebody from Reading Municipal Light Department?
Not tonight, we put that conversation off a bit
Okay.
due to your limited agenda time.
Okay, very good. So Deputy Chief, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for having us tonight and valuing our input. I was the safety officer about 10 years ago, so I have been and then in charge of parking as I got promoted to lieutenant, and now as the deputy chief, still kind of oversee, me and the chief, all of downtown parking, and it has been a hot topic in Reading for the last 10 years. We've tried to make changes. We're both members of the PTTF, the Parking and Transportation Task Force, with staff here, in which we meet monthly, and a huge topic is always parking. I think it was about 2009 that they started incorporating employee passes into the downtown parking. That has also created a lot of issues. Parking was quiet for a little while, not quiet. I do have some past data showing when we had a not full-time in parking, we had a 19-hour parking enforcement officer. A lot obviously has changed since COVID, so a lot of the data I'm using is from 2018, because I like to go by those numbers when everything was in full stride. And it looks like we issued about 2,600 parking tickets that year around town. And about 1,000 of them are for overtime parking for the 2-hour restriction. So just to give you an idea, most of our parking tickets, are from the over limits around the downtown business area. Looking at it, another one is just general overtime parking. So that's another 400. So that could be the 30-minute spots. Or any other areas of town that have a limit. So a majority of our problem is the over limit use. And then again, when we put the employee parking in, that upset a lot of other people as well. The employee areas, as you guys can see when you refer to your map, which we did away with the lease spots, which I think has helped a lot this year, but the blue sections, they're spread around town. However, most of the businesses are right down on Haven and Main Street. So they don't like to utilize the Chapin Ave employee parking or the Gould Street or the Woburn Street. So the biggest complaints in 2018 that I received were from employers. They wanted parking for their employees and right next to each business. They didn't want to walk. I have a lot of not friendly emails from employers that they wanted their employers to be parked right there. They don't want to walk. A lot of them stated when they moved into town, they were told they'd have a lot of ample parking. When I go to these DRT meetings and design review meetings, we tell these businesses you don't have a lot of public parking for your employers. However, they seem to believe that they will get it. We've always strived to go by the business model of your customers should have kind of closer accessible parking, and you should probably try to go to the outskirts and give them the closer parking. We've had some people that disagree with that, but that was the plan that the PTTF came out with last year that we had brought to the select board, was to try to maybe give the employers some incentive, give them a free parking pass and ask them to park on the outskirts of the downtown area. So that never was pushed forward, though it wasn't voted on, but that was what we came up with to try to give them, here's a benefit, we'll make it free. But some of them were still objected to not wanting to walk. And I'm talking about a street or two over, not blocks by any means. So that's our biggest concern. People are not turning over at 2 hours for some reason here in the downtown. We haven't had much enforcement recently because our parking enforcement officer went out injured, and he now has retired, but we couldn't hire back for him until this process was closed, so. Another thing we dealt with a lot with downtown and all the new structures going on, the construction vehicles. And a lot of times they're told you can't park on Haven Street, let's say. We can't determine what car is allowed to park where. We can only go by the 2-hour limit. So whether it's a construction van or regular, civilian car, they're all allowed those 2 hours. So we can't just blanket, if you're a construction truck, you can't park here. We do try to go and meet with the engineer and whoever is running the construction, saying, you guys said you wouldn't park here, can you move? Some of them are good about it, some of them aren't. So we do try to enforce that, but we do have to treat everybody the same. Some of the other questions that have been asked are, what has the impact of the new buildings downtown, residential buildings downtown caused? We had the officers check for us overnight recently. There used to be no cars downtown overnight. Now, because of some of these buildings designed, they all said, oh, we don't need your public parking. Their garages are not very conducive to these homeowners. The homeowners prefer the street parking. So there are about 18 to 24 cars parking overnight now next to Sanborn Street and Haven Street, which is not a problem right now, except it will be when the snow comes, trying to get them out of the way when we need them to. So that was never a problem before. That is something that I think may start to become a problem as business goes back to full swing or after the pandemic or anything, that those cars will be there in the morning when customers or employees are trying to get to work. So that is something we do need to look at. Again, they all said they won't need our public parking, but they use it.
Just to reiterate what the deputy said, when we did some surveys early on, the PTTF with town staff, when we asked businesses what they want. Some businesses wanted what we wanted, their employee parking pushed out, they wanted the customers to be able to park. The other half of the businesses say, no, I don't care where my customers park. I want, and I'm using words that came in from emails. I don't care where my customers park, I want my employees to be able to park right out in front of us. So we haven't gotten any consistency when we have done the surveys either, which has caused some issues. As far as the parking enforcement, like the deputy stated, I'm budgeted for an 18-hour parking enforcement person. That person was half-time as the parking enforcement person, half-time as the animal control officer. We benefited because they did work full-time. He was out there every day ticketing. We have since regionalized the animal control officer with Wakefield, so we don't have that position anymore. But technically, I'm only budgeted for an 18-hour parking enforcement position. We haven't been able to hire for it, like the deputy said, because the person was out injured. You obviously can't replace the person that was injured. They have since retired, and we are going to be looking to replace the person. But 18 hours isn't going to cut it. The town manager is already aware that I am going to be asking for the next budget cycle for a full-time person, because I don't think it's going to help even a part-time person at 20 hours a week with the Brandy Court lot, which is behind the old, I'm dating myself, behind the Atlantic, which is where Pamplemousse is and everything, and the CVS lot being 4 hours. Even if I had somebody 5 days a week, 4 hours a day, they could never actually do that enforcement because they wouldn't be here in time to look at the cars and then ticket them afterwards. So I would need a full-time person in order to have maximum enforcement. The issue we're running with now is having staff, the police officers we're trying to get down there, we're trying to do enforcement, is that I'm down 6 officers right now. I'm short 6 officers. And calls are up. We're having calls are significantly up. And for example, we had an officer who went down there. It's a 2-hour, let's say the 2-hour parking. The officer goes down, writes down the plates of all the cars that are there, goes out, on an hour and a half later, heading back, or 2 hours later, they're heading back to ticket it. The other day, car crash comes in, they head to the car crash. We can't enforce then because we've already lost that 2-hour window. By the time they get done with the car crash, they got sent to a domestic. They cleared the domestic, but now they're in doing police reports. They never got a chance to go back there. Today, same thing happened. We had a pretty nasty domestic today that we had to deal with. 4 officers had to go to that. We didn't get to do parking enforcement. So we're trying when we can. We just don't have the staffing really to enforce it. And I know that's some of the complaints that are coming in. I'm sure, Chris, from the select board, you know some of the complaints that are coming in. We're trying our best. It's just, it's not optimal. So I am going to be asking, like I said, for a full-time parking enforcement person to come in. But we've also tried to get some consistency, work with the businesses. Even the business owners haven't been consistent in what they do and don't want down there. And that's caused some headaches trying to make decisions. And because we're trying to do the best for everybody. We know we're not going to make everybody happy. We get that. We understand that. We're just trying to do the best for the most people. And that's what has caused some of the issues with us trying to enforce down there.
Yeah, and just one other misconception I want to clear up. When we talk about a resident sticker, all those red lines that if everyone's looking at the traffic map, the parking map, sorry, that's a resident sticker for the whole town. So if you purchase the Reading Access sticker, you can go to the depot, you can go to Sanborn Street, you can go on Bancroft Street, it's anywhere. It doesn't mean it's for your house on Sanborn Street or anything like that. Some people wonder that, if this is my residence, no, it's for, any resident can park at any of those spaces.
Bancroft Ave, for example, in front of the tennis courts is resident parking only. It's not residents on that street, it's Reading residents, and that resident sticker gives you it. There's been some confusion, some people call it a depot sticker. It's not a depot sticker, it's a Reading resident sticker, which allows you different things. In 2017, I believe it was, we split the tickets. It used to be one sticker for compost. It was as everything. If you wanted to use the compost, you bought the sticker. If you want to park at the train station, you bought the sticker. We split it, and off the top of my head, I want to say it was 2017 that the select board split it. So now we have a separate resident sticker and a separate compost sticker. Far more compost stickers get sold than resident stickers because of the fact that a lot of people don't use the train, and more people use the compost, and it's a cheaper price. We did raise the price of the resident sticker to $150, and the compost sticker, off the top of my head, is still $25. And that's why I split. So you're gonna see the numbers, that's where we're having trouble running the numbers back, because I can tell you prior to that, how many people actually bought it to park at the train station and how many people actually used it for the compost. And we only had a couple years of data, then the pandemic hit, and everything kind of trains weren't running, people weren't going into work. So the numbers are just, I know I'd love to be able to give you exact hard firm numbers. That's why there's a bit of some confusion with the numbers when we try to split stuff. It's tough for us to do it, if that makes sense.
And one other thing that happens a lot, people will request a 15-minute time limit space, a 30-minute time limit space. It's hard, again, we only had an enforcement officer for 18 hours. It's very hard for us to enforce a 15-minute spot and be there all the time. But another thing is I've tried on the PTTF is to not make the parking about whatever business is there right now, because we change some spaces to a time limit for 30 minutes for a certain business, and then they might be gone in 2 years. So we try to make it throughout town. If we allow a 30-minute space maybe on Main Street, put some others at the end of Haven. So we try not to make it business oriented for what's right in front at that time, because it changes so much. So we try to make it equitable around town.
And that's why, sorry, Dan, real quick, and that's why the lots went to 4 hours, because like hair salons, for example, dentist offices wanted longer parking, and the 2 hour didn't cut it. So if a family brings in 3 kids for a dentist appointment, they're over the 2 hours. That's why the PTTF brought those concerns in, went to the select board, said, hey, can we change the 2 lots to 4 hours, keep the street for 2 hours, and then some 15-minute hour, 2 hour, and because we're trying to maximize the most we can for every business. Sorry, Dan, I didn't mean to.
Okay. Do you actually have 15-minute?
We don't, because we've asked, can we at least make it 30? It's a little easier for us to keep track of a 30-minute issue. No.
And honestly, it's about discretion and education. We're not looking at 31 minutes, we're not sitting there with the ticket book and hammering you. We try to give a little bit over, but not so much that it's not enforceable either. We try to give a little bit of leeway for people and try to
Yeah,
work
and
with
then
people.
you can't even start the timer on them until you actually see the vehicle. Right? If I say, hey, there's somebody that's been here for too long, you say, well, we gotta see it. So-
Yeah, we have to physically see it. We can't, no offense, we can't go by you and say, yeah, oh, Dan said it, so we're good. No, we can't.
I understood
Yeah.
that one
Yeah,
time.
we have to physically see it, and then sometimes if it's an officer, and again, they get sent to a call for service, they might not get back there for the rest of that night, and that gets a little bit difficult for us too.
So I would definitely think we need more enforcement if we want to make everyone, stand by these rules that we've enacted.
And regulation is key, that when you regulate, that allows us to enforce. I know there's been some QCs in building projects, and I'm not criticizing the ZBA, so please don't think I'm doing that. But the ZBA, for example, says,
CPA is good,
Okay, sorry.
CPDC.
I'm not criticizing by any means, so please don't take it that way, but if they say to a business, okay, hey, you can't let your construction vehicles park out there, that's great, it's not enforceable for us. So we lucked out with the Met project downtown on the area of Lincoln Street and Prescott, because that was so heavily regulated because of the train station, that we were able to enforce a lot of that. But sometimes if agreements are made, and the construction people are like, oh, no, we won't let anybody park there, and they do, like the residents, like the neighbors are like, we were told people can't park there, we were told you can't pick that, police aren't enforcing it. We can't enforce that, we have to enforce what's signed, regulated, signed off by the select board, that's what we can and can't regulate.
A question,
Yep.
if you don't mind, Chief. The time, it's 2 hours. Now, is it 2 hours in, say, for example, I park in the CVS slot for 2 hours. Does that mean I have to move to another space there, or do I have to leave that lot?
So some people said that it's 2 hours in all of downtown Reading. That's not the way I
That's
read the law.
not the way it's written,
It's not the
yeah.
way it's written, it's not the way I read the law. If you back out and leave to go to CVS to pick up a script and pull back in the exact same spot again, you've reset the clock for 2 hours. You move one spot over, you've reset the clock. That's some
That's the way
confusion.
it's written right now.
That's the way it's written.
If we want to change that, that's okay, we
Yeah.
can ask the select board, but that is the way it is written.
In follow-up, if I may, could you comment on what, in your experience, what you feel, are there parking areas that might be a little, that in your history have found a little heavier where tickets are written more because the traffic there is a little heavier? For example, the CVS lot, obviously, I have view of that one during the day. And I think it's pretty busy, but there are other lots in town. I don't know if your experience or your tickets come in from any one geographical area.
I can tell you from the past, and if you disagree with me, let me know,
Yeah.
Deputy, the CVS lot is far busier than the Brandy Court lot. Far
I'd say
busier.
now, when we had a parking enforcement officer, most of his tickets were from behind CVS, and a little bit of Haven Street, but when I drive now, I think that Bernie Court now is just as busy almost.
It's definitely changed. Brandy Court has definitely got a lot busier than and it's almost
And it
equal to the
used to be,
CVS lot, yeah. We have seen a dramatic
It's
change.
both very busy now, yeah.
How long ago did it change from 2 hours to 4 hours in those two
I think
lots?
last March,
Oh, so
a
it
year
hasn't
ago,
been
about
that
a year or
long.
two,
Oh.
no more than 2 years ago,
Okay.
I don't know,
And
right?
again, it was based
Yeah.
off, business complaints came in, and we try to, it's true. A family of three going to a dentist is gonna need more than 2 hours. Hair salons needed more than 2 hours, so we tried to accommodate, and the lots you can stabilize a little bit more and try to keep the street flow. That's why the streets were kept 2 hours, because you're trying to keep the street traffic moving. It was a compromise to try to help all the businesses downtown.
And I think at the time, the PTTF, we had envisioned, based off the traffic study, possibly the kiosks in those lots, that would help regulate the hours there.
Can I ask you, what is PTTF?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a monthly meeting that staff has between the police department, engineering, community development, the fire department, the town manager. It's parking transportation task force. So we meet about any parking, traffic, safety concerns in town monthly. We look at what we can do to fix it right there, and what, if we can't fix it, and we go out there, we'll do a study, and okay, this resident's correct, there should be no parking on one side, it's not safe. We then can bring it to the select board to ask them to vote on a traffic rule or regulation.
And sometimes we've brought in front of the select board a temporary change. We've gotten together, and these are the engineers, DPW, public safety, planning and development teams coming together to form a plan, and we've asked them for a temporary change. Like in front of Josh Reed, for example, they're having a lot of problems with the drop off and pickup. So we came up with a plan, principal signed off on it, superintendent of schools was behind it. We went in front of the select board, we did a temporary, some changes there, implemented it for 6 months or a year, whatever it was. It worked out great, actually solved the problem. We went back to them, asked them to make it permanent, and it's great. And that's what that group does. And it's everybody getting together trying to work towards a solution. What exactly it stands for is I always throw an extra T in, so
Parking, traffic, transportation.
task force. I always throw an extra T in for some reason.
Yeah, I do too.
So what would you say now is the biggest complaint? Is it businesses? Is it residential? Like, who is complaining to you guys most that are looking for spots?
From the complaints I get, and the deputy sometimes gets different complaints than I do, the complaints I'm getting is the construction vehicles parking near all these work sites that are going on in downtown right now. And the business owners are saying, these vehicles sit here all day long, I can't get customers in here, customers are complaining. And that's what that's the most complaints I get. I don't know if you're getting.
Yeah, and then I'm getting a lot of because we're understaffed for our daytime police officers and no parking enforcement. The cars are just parked there all day on these regulated streets. But a lot in 2018, like I said, when we had a full parking enforcement officer, it was most of my complaints were from the employers looking for more employee parking.
And that's currently maxed now, right, with the permits?
Yes.
There's nothing
So we got rid of used to be able to in town purchase a lease space, and that was yours from 7 in the morning till 5 at night. Yours only, nobody else could park there. But we didn't think it was very equitable. The same 50 passes were given to the same people. So we got rid of the lease spaces, and I think that makes a lot more equitable. And now there's a lot more spaces down on High Street available. But yes, there's a 5 pass limit to each business up until February. So we start selling about November, December. by February 1st, if we have any left, a business that has already maxed out at 5 can now request more if they need it.
Did that end up happening where we were maxed
No,
out?
we're not maxed out this year. We have 150 max to sell, we're at 130. But again, I think the regulation part is probably helping because we're not out there every day checking which space they're in. I was gonna say, there's a few businesses that just, they want a lot more than 5. But they also got very upset when I tried explaining that this is a pass, but you're not guaranteed a spot. You're not guaranteed a space in a certain spot that you'd like. So that was a hard thing for them to understand too.
So you have the limit at 150, and how many, quote, technically employee spaces do we have in town?
I don't know if you have the
Ballpark,
traffic
doesn't have to
study.
The traffic study
It's
mapped
around
it out
like,
for
it's
us.
probably, I don't know the new numbers.
Like, is it equal, like?
It's pretty close. It might be a little less, because actually, we went to,
Sell 20%
we used to
more.
do that, but I think we said, never mind, we're not gonna do the above anymore to upset anybody. So we have about 100 and something spaces around. But again, some of them are on the outskirt streets and people don't utilize those.
And have you found that there's a huge, we've had someone complain to us about the 4-hour parking in the Brady Street lot. Have you had people, like, how do you feel that it's gone, switching from 2 to 4 hours? Has it, and it's hard to tell because parking's not really.
Right, I've had less complaints about that because we used to have families come in with a doctor's note or a dentist's note. I mean, they don't need to do that, but they would do that. I haven't seen that as much this year.
My opinion, even before the pandemic, to change the 4-hour and just the 2 lots, I thought it solved a lot of issues, and we got not, a lot of the complaints got knocked down from that.
So, I walk my dogs in the morning, so I'm there at 6:30 in the morning at Brady Street, and it's a brand new lot, and it's 3/4 full at 6:30 in the morning.
What we're seeing is a lot of the residents that live in that area are parking there overnight.
Well, that's part of it. I
Yeah.
walk really early, I see them overnight, but then the dentist offices, they all go in there and I see them walking in, so I feel like there's definitely an issue where they start parking there at 6:30. And then they technically don't have to move their cars to probably 1 if it's quote, 94, 4 hours. So
Yep.
I feel like that's something we're gonna look at, because it's a good lot, but.
Yeah, what was the traffic study done?
2019.
2019. I think that lot has significantly changed
Yeah,
since
yeah.
then.
And it mentions we have about 520 permit parking spaces that's on street and off street, but that likely includes
That's not
resident
just employee,
parking,
yeah.
right?
The other thing for those 4-hour spots, it's 4 hours or all day with employee as well,
In
Some
the
of them.
entire
Some of
lot or just
No.
part of, just some of the spaces?
some of them.
Right, right,
Those are typically 2-hour or employee.
right, around the outside of the lot, but,
We did, a couple years ago, we did start seeing a lot of residents parking there overnight, which became an issue for the DPW. So then the select board did vote to make it that you cannot park there overnight during a snowstorm anymore. So we can at least regulate that, because it used to be, if you can't park on the street, come to our lots, but that doesn't work for the DPW. So that we can do.
Are there any locations that you think would be good to be used for employee parking that aren't being used for employee parking?
When we looked at it, we were trying to look at more of the outskirts of, but then some of our residents don't really want someone parked in front of their house all day that's at work. So we were trying to look at some of the outskirt streets of the downtown. And that's really the only best thing that we could come up with, other than, the hopeful parking garage we would love to see at either one of those parking lots.
So you
It's
think
hard
a-
because you upset other people.
So you think a second level behind CVS would be beneficial to the downtown area?
Yes.
Yes. I understand it, again, I understand cost, everything. If you double the parking behind CVS, yes, obviously that's gonna help.
So if you could snap your fingers and magically make this entire situation go away, that is the number one thing that you're doing. Would you?
My non-expert in public
Yes.
and building,
Yes.
I would say yes, that would be an instant fix. Come off of Woburn Street, you're driving on the second floor of the parking garage, you go to exit on the first floor into Haven Street.
Surprisingly, on our survey, you'd be curious to know that your exact statement you just made is actually in there.
Really?
Yes, somebody agrees exactly with what
Okay,
you just
outstanding.
I find it
No, not
fascinating.
yet, I plan to fill out the survey, but not yet.
What's the IP address?
What's even more curious is that I haven't looked at the survey. So It's
Yeah,
very-
I've heard that from a lot, we've heard that over the past, we've had that for years though, why don't you put a parking garage back there? And because of where you're coming off of Woburn Street and you have to come downhill anyway, that's been discussed in meetings for years now, the possibility of that. Again, is it cost effective, is it feasible? Probably not, but if you're asking me, yes, double the parking, that would work.
That would work to solve a customer problem or an employee problem?
My opinion, you can make the employees park on the second floor and have the customers park on the first floor. And that would resolve a little bit of both.
Do you have any views on, you know, like, why? I mean, how do you enforce the employee, if an employee has a sticker, it's affixed to their car, I assume? So but what if they're an employee, but they don't have a sticker, but they still park? How do you know if there's an employee
So right now, the
parking?
employee pass is a hanging placard, so
Right.
those are the ones that are allowed to park in those blue spaces all day.
Right.
But an employer could be a Reading resident and they have the other sticker, so they can park on all the other streets, all day long. But normally, it's just a $20 fine if somebody is in a spot that they're not supposed to be in. And that's always, we don't have any increase. If it's the same car, it's still $20 a day, which was another issue with the construction workers. When I was like, okay, you're gonna get ticketed, they're like, that's fine. In Boston, I get towed. So, all we have is a $20 fine.
Or we heard that my boss is gonna pay it anyway, so go ahead and whack me for $20, and it didn't change, again, it didn't change the behavior.
Right.
And it's,
So, but even if a person well, if they are an employee, but they decide not to use the employee hanging sticker, they can park anywhere they want anyway, right? Except for the resident only, if they're not a resident.
Well, no, it's all time downtown, so it would either be a 2-hour or a 4-hour.
Right.
So they would get a $20 ticket after that,
Assuming that you're able to enforce
if we
it.
are out, yes.
But it sounds like you're not able to necessarily
We hope
enforce
to
all
soon.
that.
Yes,
hope to
We
soon,
hope to get
yes.
that,
And you said you were 6 officers down. Is that just because of sickness or something, or are those positions going to be filled, or?
so it's funny, so I'm staff of 46 police officers. So I've hired, but I got a couple in the academy. They don't count as police officers, but the staffing is there. I have a female officer who's on maternity. She can't wear the gun belt or the bulletproof vest anymore. So she's working an admin job for us, so she doesn't count as a body on the road, but she's still here with us. I have an officer that we lost almost 2 years ago, the National Guard. That's been active by the National Guard that I haven't seen in almost 2 years. So it's a mix of things. So staffing wise, I'm down one. We're down one that I need to hire for, but I'm down 6 people that can actually physically work the job, if that makes sense. I know it sounds kind of confusing, and for us to hire, for example, one of my new hires, the next academy isn't until, we can't work as a police officer until you've been through the academy. The next academy isn't until January 17th. It's a 6-month academy, so he's gonna graduate in July and then do 3 months of field training with us. So I will not actually see him on the road until this time next year.
What about other departments? They don't have to go through the academy again if they already went through, if they're transferring from
we're
a.
trying that right now.
Yeah, we lucked out,
But
so.
everybody's doing the same
Yeah,
thing.
recently, out of the past 3 hires, 2 came to us. One came over from Arlington, one came from the MBTA.
Right.
Both academy trained, we were able to hire them, do a brief, initiation with Reading, boom, right on the road. So we lucked out.
Right.
Problem is what is happening is it's where all the agencies are doing the same thing. So we're hopefully trying to hire, but we just lost, one of our officers just resigned because he got hired by the FBI. It's great, I'm glad for him, he really wanted to move with the federal, but it's an officer we lost, and a good officer for us. But I'm happy he's moving up, the FBI is getting a good person.
In any given year, do you normally have 6 officers that aren't sort of on the job because of all these? It sounds like these things are normal life situations that could happen.
Six,
any year.
no, one, we had a year we were down 11. Normal for us is 1 or 2. I don't think since I'm in my 26th year.
Right.
Very rarely we've been fully staffed due to various things. We do have, at one point, we had 3 people in the military activated. The deputy chief is a former military like myself. She got activated for 3 tours while she was working here. So we lost her for a year and 6 months. So it happens, but we can always get through it. But 6, I wouldn't say is the normal, but probably 1 or 2.
And having officers do parking enforcement, is that sort of a good fill-in because they're out on the street watching things going on and also doing a little parking enforcement? I mean, I know it sounds like you've articulated the difficulties of doing that because if they go away, they can't monitor the 2-hour or 4-hour limits. But aside from that, is it a useful thing for them to do, or should they be doing things other than that?
I'd rather, honestly, if we could have a park enforcement person focusing on the parking, I'd much rather have the officer in a neighborhood doing speeding enforcement, stop signs, red lights. I would much rather than being out there proactive, stopping my lemonade stands, talking to kids, playing at the playground. I'm more of a community policing oriented, so I'd rather have that than walk around ticketing. But I understand the ticketing for the businesses is part of our community policing to help the businesses out. So it's kind of one of those mix. Ideally, yes, park enforcement person deals with parking. My officers are out there in the community doing what the community wants us to do.
And then the enforcement officer, the traffic enforcement officer, is that person, what's the optimal time for that person? In other words, is there like a really peak time between, 8 and 12 or something that's where you're gonna have the most difficulty enforcing parking? Or the parking is most acute there when you have to enforce it, or is it 24 hours? Clearly not 24 hours, because after a certain period, there's nobody parking down there anyway, right? So what's the right mix of hours that they should be on the job?
Yeah, I mean,
Three.
so the train station is not an issue right now. And if it was busy again, those hours are only regulated from 6:30 to 10. So they would have to get there at least at some point earlier than that if you wanted to make sure that everyone has a Reading resident sticker at the train station. But that's easy because if they're parked there, there's no time, you just get ticketed right then. So about a regular day, about 8 to 4, because the busiest rush is probably 9 to 1 around downtown, where the most traffic is.
This parking enforcement person that you're looking for, and if you're fortunate enough to get the individual full-time, is that a person that has to go through the academy?
No,
Or
it's-
because he's under a separate job description, he would come under immediate hire, or?
So it's a civilian. So it's not a police officer. It's a civilian that, per the bylaws of the town, has the right to enforce parking regulations. And so it's a civilian that works under the police department, similar to an admin person, a dispatcher, the coalition, and somebody that works under the police department, but it's a civilian. So we could hire somebody and get them out there.
Yeah, it would be very minimal
Yeah.
training to get them.
Yeah.
And, we would look to upgrade some, they make a lot of equipment now to help parking enforcement officers, like automated general tickets. A lot of our parking enforcement officer, I don't know if anybody knows him, people complained a lot. I wasn't in this spot, I wasn't there, and he just kept track on a notebook. So I'd really rather try to get some good technology that helps back up what they're, ticketing people for.
And it's like a handheld scanner that goes through, scans the plates in, logs the time in, and when they come back through again, it scans up and they can automatically print the ticket for the person. Like, we would definitely upgrade some technology to help that out. Kiosks, I know it's a controversial subject. Kiosks in the 4 hours lot helps enforcement. It's a simple thing. This is where you checked in, you come by, the time stamp's right on there. It makes it easier for us if somebody tries to appeal the ticket.
Somebody
If I can-
somebody was trying to
if I
comment
can-
from online, yeah, go ahead.
If I can zero in on that, that's one thing. As effective as technology might be for the parking enforcement officer, what I heard you say is that because of the way that our regulations are, it takes them double the time to enforce, because you gotta go and check the first time they're there and then come back and check again, versus like the sticker or a kiosk where you just come by and it is, you're either have the sticker or you don't, or you have the receipt or you don't. So I guess that I think that we as Park need to understand that we're potentially adding a headcount to town staff, because of parking enforcement, the regulations that we have. We got to think about that as we also evaluate the kiosks and whatever sort of regulations we put in place. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, for example, yeah, if you need a sticker to park at the depot and we drive through the lot and you don't have a sticker, that's an easy ticket. You're parked in a handicap spot and you don't have a handicap placard, that's an easy ticket. Parked in front of a fire hydrant, easy. The timing, the 2-hour spots, 30 minutes, that's where it takes a little bit more time consuming. But again, with some technology, yes, we can really improve that and make it quicker than we currently do now. Did I answer your
But
question?
even with the technology, you still, an officer or the parking enforcement officer would need to stop by them twice, right?
Yes.
Could I-
Although I do hear, right, there is technology out there that we can embed in the pavement to let us know how long a car has been in a particular space, but, it's not that expensive, but I'm not sure Reading is quite there yet.
Could I ask you again for the time that you thought was the busiest time for the highest need for an enforcement person being on the scene?
I mean, I know the traffic, I think the traffic study said 10 to 2 is our, right?
Yeah, I
Probably.
think so.
And that's just what I see too. Lunchtime is obviously very hectic. If anybody tries to get lunch downtown, you really can't find a space close by. You can go to the outskirts, you will get a space. So definitely lunchtime is very busy, from what I see working every day.
I mean, it might be helpful for us. That's good information, but if you sleep on it and say,
Yeah.
okay, oh wait, I forgot to say this, could you just please,
Sure.
follow up with us and educate us a little bit
Yes.
better on, what you think that the resource is that you need if we, decide to recommend it.
Yeah, and I think that that's for downtown. If you go to the resident streets and let's say it was pre-pandemic, I'm sure their concern would say, well, there's train parkers parking in front of my house by 6 in the morning, 6:30.
Yeah.
So,
Can I ask you a question, back to the physical permit? Tag tags, you say there's 150, and you talked about that you had discussed about having incentivized it a little bit, make free ones farther out. What were your conversations about that? Just, like, did you come up with a number for the ones that would be free and where, figure out the spaces to do that?
our plan was to pretty much all employee passes would be free and it would be all the outskirts. And then that brought some employers say, so a lot of it, I don't know if you know the back of Brandy Court, if we asked them to all park on Woburn Street and just go down that hill, some people were concerned with lighting and snowplow, so we would have to look into making sure it's all safe for them. But it's a really easy cut through, so we were only asking them to go to Woburn Street from Brandy Court.
I think with the proposed expanded areas, we were adding a large number of
Right.
employee parking spaces,
Right,
a few
and-
hundred.
So when I drive around or walk around, I see that a lot of that is not used even now,
Right.
even though it says it's employee parking, 2-hour parking, so it's just
Right.
curious why they don't, it's not that far,
Right.
so.
It's been the feedback we got is I don't want my employees to park that far away. They should be parking closer, and that's
Right.
it's.
Yeah,
you
I
wanna
brought
put the
emails
employees
that
in the
say I'm
outskirts.
being unreasonable to ask them to park on Woburn Street from Brandy Court, so.
So what's the percentage of the people that are saying that? Like, is it a
I-
huge percentage, or is it
It
just
probably is, I mean,
a loud couple? There may be like a couple that are very loud, louder than the others.
yeah, I hope it's, I don't know for sure, we've invited, I don't know if Andrew went to a lot, they had a few downtown business meetings. I was only more at the select board meeting, so I know what they voiced then, or what I got emailed, and it's not a ton, correct, of mine. It's a few it's more of the larger businesses in town, I don't wanna name them, but.
No, that's okay.
I wanted to make a point earlier. In my business, I'm on the edge of downtown, and I've dealt with the parking enforcement officer. He's very diligent. Well, he's not there anymore, but he was excellent. And even after hours, I've had some parking issues that I've called in the office, and if they can get to me, they do get to me. And they note the time, go on a call or do whatever, and come back, and they've written a bunch of tickets. So I really haven't had any issues, really. I mean, you guys have been excellent about, and after hours too, so I appreciate all that stuff that you guys have been doing.
We take it seriously, like, we want all the businesses to succeed, we want the residents happy, we want people to be able to show up, we want the employees happy. We know we can't make everybody happy, but we're trying to do our best, and we do, if the business is saying, we want you to ticket people, we'll ticket them. And we had certain businesses say, I don't care if you ticket my employees, if they're not parking where they're not supposed to be, go ahead and ticket them, they should learn. And we try to help everybody out, show some discretion, 2 hours, we try to get a little bit over, but same token, you start hitting a certain points or two, it's not fair to the businesses that have that turnover that need it. And that's what we're really trying to help people out, and it's,
And we tried to think of outside, like, you know, things that might not be busy at night, like the senior center. Maybe we can use parking there, but then it goes too far and people park there overnight and we can't get rid of them in the morning when the senior people need to park. So we've tried to utilize other lots that may not be busy during certain times, but then it becomes a problem of trying to get them out for the times that we need it.
My main issue with night was
A point
the,
if, excuse me, I'm sorry, okay, go ahead.
I was gonna just follow up on my is the restaurant across the street, sometimes they, you know, go over that. In front of my store is a half-hour limit, so it's kind of crazy. But the other point I wanted to make was the Rise 475. The builder over there was excellent. I had some issues with the subcontractors, went and talked to him. He said, I'll put the word out. He did, and he says, anybody parks there, come and see me direct, and I'll get them moved right away. And I have.
Yeah, some have been great to deal with.
They
yeah.
really
He
were
was
good.
yeah.
Yeah. What I want to ask is, generally, certain lots are busy, as was mentioned already, at a prime time of day. Would it create a hardship if it was on the police, if it was a recommendation that restricting deliveries? Because I see sometimes you get some of these deliveries to businesses, which now are open to deliver anytime during the day. But if they pick one of the high points of the day, A, they either block somebody in because of the size of the trucks, or B, they take some open spots because they're trying to be as considerate as possible. Would that, I don't know if your experience, would that create a hardship on the police, or how you feel about a recommendation of limiting the deliveries like to the late PM or early AM or something, you know, from the lots?
the only issue is you're also dealing with the delivery schedule. Sometimes it's not the business's fault. The delivery is trying to make 14 different deliveries. Is 495 shut down because of a traffic accident? Now they're an hour or two behind, and now they can't make the deliveries. We move the people along as much as we can. We try to help them out when we can. If the more you regulate, the more we have to now try to enforce. And now the business is like, oh, come on, like I'm just trying to get I need this in to run my business, and then 3 hours late, like I apologize. It's kind of like one of those, it's a great idea in theory, but in practicality, is it enforceable? Does it make things more difficult? So we always try to work with everybody as much as we can, and I think that's part of the issue. It's just really.
Yeah, I don't think we'd ever get every business, like
Yeah.
the delivery business is on board for that, and they're just gonna keep doing it, it's just gonna be us chasing the same thing. What we have done though, what we can do, is we've noticed it's not really so much the businesses, it's more the new apartment complexes. They are trying to block, I'll drive to work and I see on Lincoln Street, there's cones put all out. They can't do that, it's public parking, they're trying to put cones out for their deliveries or their moving trucks. So we've made it very clear to these new businesses, you cannot do that. So we can do that. You can't cone off a space, if you get it, you get it, if you don't, you don't. But
We get
Oh,
unique
yeah.
with the two. They'll put the cones out, we move them off the side, they put them up the next day. I told the officer, okay, if they're on the street, they're abandoned property, confiscate them, bring them back to the police station. They didn't buy any new
We'll
cones.
give 'em back.
It's kind of, you prove the point,
Yeah.
and we get a little creative sometimes.
But there's just so many different deliveries, I think it'd be really hard to get them all on board, but it's a great idea.
That would be impossible. I mean,
Yeah, but you know, with different vendors, you just never have it happen.
If you had a dedicated space, which is just for deliveries, but I'm not sure how you do that for each business, because unless it was built into the development plan. And then, of course, you're taking space up that could be for parking, and you have to keep it free for deliveries. I don't know if you have any views on that.
Well, that's part of the problem. Let's say for a box truck, it's 4 parking spaces. Let's say hypothetically, I don't know if it is. So you have a dedicated spot that is being used 45 minutes, an hour a day, and now can't be used for parking. Again, parking at a premium. Again, in theory, it sounds great. In practicality, we're actually hurting ourselves.
I was curious about the comment you said that there was a lot more overnight parking. Yet, in theory, the development plan should have allotted, for like 1.25 spaces per living unit. And the idea is that therefore all the residents should be parking on the property. Why would they, is that ratio enough in your opinion, or why aren't they using the on-site parking? What do you hear that they're parking overnight? I mean, if you had spaces in your building, why wouldn't you park there? I'm confused why they would park overnight on the street.
Right, so I have never thought the ratio is enough as a police officer. I said, oh, I'm gonna be dealing with this, and this is the ratio you guys are giving. And then also allowing a lot of compact spaces to count in their plans. And then the homeowner buys their home, sees their spot, and they can't fit in it. That's what we're dealing with one complex in particular. The vehicles don't fit, they can't get out of the car, so it's a lot easier than we're hearing to park on Haven or Sanborn or wherever and take their groceries out that way. So the compact spaces, I think, are an issue. There is no standard what is a compact space in the police world, so we can't regulate that even in a private business anyway. But I think that I think they underestimate the amount of cars that people are gonna have with visitors, and then the compact spaces I think are an issue, but.
And that's the complaints I've heard. We've asked people why you park on the street. I can't, have you seen the size of my spot? I can't fit my car in there. You can't fit a normal SUV. And I'm not talking a Suburban or a Tahoe. I'm talking like an Explorer, a Ford Explorer, a Chevy Traverse. You can't fit those into those spots. They're tight, and then when you add the columns in, some people said, I've backed out twice, I've hit the column twice, I'm not parking there anymore, I'm gonna park on the street.
So why are they allowed to have parking spots so small? I mean, is that a state?
That's not
From
a,
the
that has to
IDRs
go
up?
through the CPDC and.
John, do you have a view on that?
There's been an issue with developers building according to the plans that were approved, or not building to the plans that were approved. So, and then once the building is built, what do you do? Like the issue on, where they built the foundation, right across from the depot, and, not on their property, right? You tear the whole building, you may tear the whole building down. But I know there's a building in town here where they just build it to the plan, and the parking spots are too small. So do you want them to tear the whole thing down? It's a legitimate question. So, there's a building workman issue as well going on here.
Are we doing public comment at some point, or?
I was,
Buy
yeah,
a smaller car too, you don't have to own a car, like, sometimes things don't necessarily fit, and it's a good idea to right size it.
how do you tell?
There must be an inspection
Tell the person
process
that's got
during the construction.
two baby seats in the car, and they just can't fit them in a
You can put that
compact car.
in a small SUV, like Jeep Cherokee or something like that.
If you
What
can't
if
park, right, if we enforce, in the winter, no on-street parking, those homeowners, they're gonna figure it out really quick. Right?
I mean, that's why people like,
Where do you put your car?
that's why people like, really walkable areas like downtown Boston, because of before parking regulations and before like our parking minimums. And so it's more walkable, it's more dense packed, and cars don't necessarily need to be everywhere.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I was
we'll
gonna
stay
ask
in case it's
If
directed
you
at
have,
us, we can.
we can ask for public comment for Chief Clark and Deputy Chief Amendello. Are there any public comments for them?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Dave Talbot, Linden Street. If I may.
Please.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Chief Clark and Deputy Chief Amendola. That was very interesting, and I think this discussion over the past 3 minutes really zeroed in on a potential kind of big source of new problems, which is the inadequate parking in these large new buildings and too small spaces. And I don't know the solution to that, but it's interesting that was new to me, that these are causing major new parking occupation on overnight and into the day on our streets. Just when we have a problem, we're now making it worse. And I think it's an unforeseen, and it needs to be addressed somehow. I don't have an answer for you, but I just wanted to thank all of you for discussing that, because it is a big issue, and it probably will get a lot bigger. And as far as what do you do to a developer who doesn't build his plan? Well, I don't know if these developers have performance bonds, where if they don't build to spec or build to the plan, they have to forfeit a $10 million bond or a $5 million bond. I've seen that done elsewhere. I don't know what the town is doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Any other comments from the public? Any other questions or comments from the,
Was there another gentleman?
I think there was another person, I don't know if there's still
It
on.
looks like he left, Dave's the only one on right now.
If we do, when would we hire this parking enforcement person?
So I know, I talked to the town manager, and the town manager's, I gotta say, it's gonna be a loss when he goes. Because he listens and he understands, and knows we need something, it's gonna be a huge loss for us. We're working on trying to come up with a temporary solution now, and then in hopes of going in front and asking for even if a part-time person right now would at least help offset the offices, so we are looking towards hiring. The biggest issue we ran into was, we had to wait till the person was actually no longer an employee before we could backfill them for them. So I know the town manager and I have been meeting together to try to come up with a plan moving forward for this. Biggest thing we had to, we were running into an issue with this was my animal control officer for a while. And the deputy chief shouldn't be she's got bigger problems to deal with than the animal control problem. So with that was kind of became a priority for us, because we figured we're still kind of in the pandemic a little bit. Let's deal with the animal control officer, get that part wrapped up. We've done that, we worked at Wakefield, we regionalized, we think that's gonna work out well. So now we've turned our focus back on the parking enforcement person. We kind of had to prioritize, and I hope that makes sense. Now that's our focus on it. And I know the town manager and I have been in conversation with them, and he already knows that I'm gonna, this is a surprise to him, that I'm gonna be asking for funding going forward. And maybe come up with a temporary solution, maybe as we're coming out of the pandemic, hopefully, and coming through and people start parking in the town, we can have at least a part-time person helping out, officers can supplement. And then I can go in front of town meeting and ask for more funding to help it.
You do have funding right now though, right? For-
I have funding for an 18-hour position, that's what I have. Because the part of the fee, my animal control part of it, that hours is going to pay for the regionalization with Wakefield for the animal control officer.
So you could hire somebody now, except it's a question of whether it makes sense to hire them, because maybe there aren't as many parking violations because not too many people are parking in the.
It could, I was just honestly, how do I hire them? If it's an 18-hour person, how many hours a day is that? And if with the 4-hour lots, maybe they could help with the 2-hour parking, but if they only work, let's say it's a 20-hour position and they work 5 days a week, 4 hours, yeah, they could help with the 2-hour part, but they couldn't help with the 2 4-hour lots, if that makes sense, because they wouldn't actually physically be there to see it. So I just
I'd
wanna make
just
sure
like
this is
to
a mistake.
reinforce that, because I see the CVS lot very, very busy.
Yeah.
And when you had, even though it was 18, 20 hours,
Yeah.
people seem to be, it was getting into a system where people were respecting that, knew that there would
Yep.
be somebody coming around. Now it's the wild, wild west out there, and they know they're not gonna be stopped as far as the hours that they're out there for, and the flow isn't as smooth, because back there now, it's really congested, as it's already been said, from about 10 to 2 p.m., especially at lunch. So the sooner we can get somebody, even if it's 18 with the
Yep.
idea that you can promote them up to 40 and address that, I think the sooner we get back to some sort of parking enforcement, I think, at least speaking for the CVS lot, I know that law.
And I 100% agree, and my goal, like I said, I approached the time, ACO's wrapped up, that was a priority, that's done. We can focus on the park enforcement. Part-time person helps, it's better than nothing, and we can then supplement it with the actual police officers working the road. And but if I get my National Guard person back up, that's staffing, we can put more out there, it's kind of, it's like a snowball effect.
I think to Tom's point though, is that the people that are taking longer than they're supposed to at the lot that he has, I think we have to find a solution for that anyway, because they gotta go somewhere. They're not just hanging out in Reading, enjoying the beautiful sunlight and everything else. So they gotta go somewhere.
But I think
So
once we start forward, we're gonna see it's employers again, and they're gonna come back with the same questions, where do we go?
And like you said, I know you walk your dog early, Woburn Street's open, that's where we're directing them to, but like I said, the deputy chief got an email like, you're crazy for telling me I have to walk that far. Trying to.
Rarely can you park right next to your business, like, I don't know where that behavior came from. That's just.
I'm not sure either, because we've always had heavy enforcement in the downtown as much as we could, so I'm not sure
I
either.
think they'll adapt, I really
Yeah.
do. I mean, if that's the spot that's open,
Yeah.
they'll find that. Because right now, the people that are coming down can't find a spot, they're going there and walking back because they, so I think it's just being fair to, as I said, it seemed to be working with the system. And I know COVID changed a lot, but if we get back to some similar normalcy where they know there's an officer looking over their shoulder, I think we'd all be better, the system would be better off.
I think what happened was, I know we proposed a bunch of regulations, working hard with staff, eliminated the lease spots, went to employee only, and we didn't really get the chance to test everything with the data, with the full-time parking, for the park enforcement person here, everything. He went out, COVID hit, and it just, everything got kind of, it's a little crazy. I'm sure you all have been out there driving and seen that, I think people need to go back to driving school after being out for COVID. It's getting a little scary out there driving sometimes, and it's just, I said, we'll get there, it's definitely a focus of ours, and that's my next plan to work on this.
You said that the number of parking spaces allotted to the new developments is inadequate. Do you have a view on what's an adequate number? I mean, in your work from other, with what you see here, and maybe you've corresponded with other departments in other cities?
So I just want to point back to the parking utilization data that we gave you guys on these multifamily developments. There's not a single building that's oversold or has more cars than available parking spaces. Whether that means they're using those parking spaces or not, that's their habit and practice and design. But right now, the numbers seem to indicate that it is enough parking on site for the residents that live there and access.
And to add to that, the Nelson Nygaard study said that there was enough parking. It was just a distribution issue from the study.
Yeah, I mean, just from what I see, I think it's changed a lot since the study. But I don't know the exact number. I don't know the mathematics of what a department should have. But I don't know if these are visitors or they just like parking on the street all day. But they're definitely doing it. I don't know why.
There's also single family houses that love to park on the street instead of driveways, habit, and people's.
It's funny, people don't like people parking in front of the house. So we know people that won't use the driveway because they don't like other people parking in front of the house, and they park right in front of the house and try to take up as long as they can.
But I mean, I understand that. The reason I asked the question is because I did read that data that shows, there is an adequate amount of spaces for each apartment. But then when you hear this other data that seems to say that, we've got 24 cars parking overnight, well, that doesn't jive with the data. So either the data's wrong or their observations are wrong, and I trust their observations because they're telling us that they're seeing it. So the question is, how do we
Well, we also
How do we
don't know who the
reconcile the
cars are,
difference?
it could be visitors that are parking in the street
But
overnight.
overnight, I mean, I guess, but you're saying these are overnight parking as well as people parking during the day that are residents. Is that true?
We had our officers check overnight. I don't know if they're belong to those apartments or they're visitors. We didn't check that. We just had them count how many cars have been parking overnight.
The only way we know is to run the plate, and that's not one of my reasons I can run the plate, so see where they come back to. So, yeah, we counted how many cars on the street overnight. That's where the night patrol force do. We can tell you this many cars have been parking out overnight. Is it part of it is you might have mentioned it, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you didn't, is it a habit thing? Is it trying to get people, what Tom, you mentioned about getting back into a cycle, getting back in a habit of parking in the right spots, and maybe forcing them with some heavier enforcement, getting them back into the parking garage? Is it laziness? Is it inherently people, you know how it is, you can have a crosswalk over here, but people cross over here because it's quicker? Is it like re-educating people or retraining? I'm not sure.
How would you enforce that? If they've got, because we're giving them resident parking permits because they live downtown for free, right? And so then if they have that sticker and they're parking on the street as opposed to in the garage that is designated for them, how would you ever know or enforce them to not park there?
For, certain streets like Sanborn, they could, none of them that we know of have come in for a sticker, but can they? Yes, according to the bylaws, they all can. And they can park on any of the streets that say resident parking. So they wouldn't be able to do Haven Street, but they could park on Sanborn all night. And they could stay there forever unless we enacted another rule. you know, unless we were enforcing all-night parking all the time downtown or something like that.
I know we've talked a lot about the immediate downtown, but one of the, I mean, I kind of represent part of Reading that's sort of a minority on this committee, but I guess the commuter, I have a question on the commuters side of things, because again, pre-COVID, and hopefully we'll get back to that at some time in the future, but all I know is that if you don't get the 7:30 train and you're not there by 7:10 to get the 7:30 train, you're not able to park, in the, near the, you have to walk, it's only a 4 or 5 minute walk, but you get pushed out into the side streets, which I know is a concern of some of the residents. So do you have any views on, it seems like we have like some 800 or so resident parking paid stickers, which you have in your data. But is that enough? Because it's like, I don't have a resident parking sticker because I don't go in that corner. I do need to take the train, so I can't park down there. So I wind up parking on a side street. Do you have any sense for whether the commuter parking is adequate, and if it's not, do they wind up migrating into these other spaces? And how do you view that?
So I can tell you pre-COVID, that lot, I agree with you, if you didn't catch, if you weren't there by 7:30, you weren't getting a parking space on High Street, Lincoln Street, or on the two lots that the town owns right around the depot.
Right.
By 8, a little bit after 8, I would say you wouldn't catch any of Washington Street, Prescott, some of those areas that are regular for parking. That was it. And my wife commutes in every day to work. So, yes, I think that it's just enough parking. And my concern is when we talk about reutilizing that, I think that's taking that down parking away. Is the world going to be different after COVID? Are more people going to be working from home? I don't know. But pre-COVID, no, those spots you needed all the spaces you had for the train.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to walk way up.
Yep.
I mean, you could walk close to a quarter of a mile.
Yep.
Up, and you have to find parking way up there, and that was true on several of those streets that go up toward the west of town.
We did get some complaints from the Mount Vernon area, Bancroft Ave, Grand, School Street.
Yeah.
That whole area of non-residents parking there and walking down the train station. And they didn't mind walking because they could park in those neighborhoods because they're unregulated for free. And it was a lot cheaper than paying, I think the T-lot was like $7
Yeah,
a day.
and it gets full quickly.
Yeah, that gets full quick. That T-lot off of Vine Street between, along the tracks.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Thank you. I think that's about $7 a day, last time I heard. That gets filled up quickly, so people could just park just up on Mount Vernon, School Street, Dudley, and for free, and they have no problem, especially out of towners, walking down there. So I think the train was far more utilized than actually for people in town, and because the Reading commuter rail, unless things have changed, I think for every 3 trains that came to Reading, 1 went past Haverhill. So people from the North Andover area would have no problem coming down here because there's far more trains available to them.
Yeah, and those trains that terminated or began in Reading and go into town, if you're right, if there were only, there were fewer trains coming all the way from Haverhill into Boston, so people from Haverhill down to Reading would have to drive to Reading to catch that train. And then they would have to find a place to park, and I don't think we're adequately, and they can't buy resident stickers because they're not residents.
Correct.
But they still have to go to work, and they still have to park somewhere. And they're trying to do the right thing by taking public transportation, but I know from my experience that if you don't get a parking space around Reading, and then you try to go further toward downtown to get let's say the Orange Line, it's impossible to get parking in Malden, near Melrose, Malden, and Oak Grove, or Malden Station. Sullivan is, you might as well, you can drive all the way to Sullivan, but you're almost to Boston at that point anyway.
Yep.
And it sort of defeats the purpose of taking public transportation. So, I mean, it's extraordinarily frustrating for people who are trying to use public transportation to do this. And I think it's a need that I don't think we've talked about at this committee level, but I think it's important. It's important, and I'm not sure what the solution is, other than to say that, you just broaden the, you broaden the ability of people to park, or you just have to educate the population that if we want to have a commuter rail station here, then we have to have parking for people who are taking the commuter rail. And to try to squeeze them out or to do something is unfair to them, and it's a problem that needs to be solved as well as part of this whole situation.
I know sometimes plans were brought up, people suggested, oh, why don't you take some of the depot parking and use that for employee parking, downtown parking. That lot is heavily used. Pre-COVID, it definitely was. In the future, who knows? I don't think any of us know, but.
Ernie, the MBTA regional planning for commuter rail, it designates sort of like, or defaults to each station is sort of different types of stations based on parking availability and development around the station and that sort of thing. Right, we do need to note that that Anderson Transportation Center, only a short drive from most of Reading, has ample parking that is never filled up and is actually a quicker ride into most of Boston. That's exactly where we're going. But from a regional standpoint, we do have a nice regional station. I would not be for one of trying to change the downtown Reading to accommodate regional parking, in downtown Reading, since we have that other really more accessible station over just over the line into Uber.
John, that's a great point.
I mean, John, I'm sorry, but I have to, so you're telling me that I'm a resident of Reading, I live here, I pay taxes here, and you're telling me that I should go over to Woburn to take the train from there instead of being able to park here in my own town?
I've done it many times.
I've done it many times, ask people from Melrose, ask people from, up and down the line, that happens, but no, that's not necessarily what I'm saying, but what you were leading to, or what I thought you were leading to, is that we should widen out parking in downtown Reading to accommodate regional, parking for, the region and regional access to Reading commuter rail, because Reading commuter rail, is essentially a net station for half the trains that come through here. So we could probably, as much parking as we provided for commuter rail patrons would be full. Like, we could pave the whole downtown, probably not the whole downtown, but you know what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of demand because the service to Reading on the commuter rail is great. And a lot of the region wants to come to Reading specifically to access that.
And I agree.
I think the trick here, and we probably do a decent job, but I think that our point here is, how can we make sure that we have enough parking without inundating downtown with commuter parking.
Yeah, I agree. We're not trying to incentivize, or we're not trying to accommodate other commuters from other towns. And if that's something that we see happening, we should focus on making sure that only Reading residents are utilizing the parking around the commuter rail.
We can tell you that's heavily enforced with the stickers, because that, like I said, that's an easy drive-through, no sticker, boom, ticket. You don't have to wait, Anthony, that's easy enforcement. We're seeing it, the outside people parking in the areas that aren't regulated. Dudley School, Mount Vernon, that area. And that's where we're seeing it increase for out-of-towners parking there.
Yeah, but I think the privilege of having a commuter rail is that it's going to attract demand, right? So you can't say, here's a commuter rail station, but don't use it. But that makes no sense.
Demand also doesn't have to arrive by personal vehicle. They can be dropped off.
Sure.
They
I
can
mean,
be
if you live in- if
protected
you live
bike
in-
lane. It
if
could
you live
be
in- if
commuter
you live in-
feeder, bus route.
If you live in North Reading, if you go right up from here to Haverhill, any of those towns, there's not adequate public transportation to get those residents into Boston. So the only choice they have is, I argue, I would agree that
There's a
Woburn.
great express bus system from Andover and North Reading into downtown Boston.
Right,
And
and
Bernie, I don't think you want to argue regional transportation with us, but that's not really what you that's not what we're here for. But I do think, right, that the point here is that we need to figure out how to accommodate stump parking for Reading commuter rail passengers. And you know, I completely agree with the chief here that you know the stickers, right, are a great way to do that. And I don't think, I guess what I'm really getting at is, I don't think that we ever get to a place where there won't be some use of parking that is free, if we have any free parking, for I'm kind of gonna say out of towners to access the commuter rail station. That's part of life that I think that we need to live with. We can't regulate our way out of that, just like we can't build our way out of, you know, congestion. You know, I think there is some things that we need to live with in terms of having a great commuter rail system in town.
And, you know, some of those people, when they come to town, they might shop here or spend time here. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing to have people from other towns coming into Reading to spend their money and help with the town's revenues. So, I mean, I just think it's, you know, to try to have a station and then say you can't use it, you can't park here, you know, you're not welcome here, is a rather selfish and, you know, not a very welcoming policy to have to our neighbors and friends.
A lot of them have their own stations though.
They have their own stations, but the MBTA has chosen not to service those stations between here and Haverhill for a lot, you know, for a bunch of the, I mean, that's just the schedule, it's just the reality. If you want to change the MBTA, that's great, I'm all for it. But I don't know that we're here to,
No.
we're here
We're
to
not here to
control the
that.
MBTA, but
It's
all I'm
also-
saying is that the demand is there and it's going to come. We just have to make sure that we can accommodate it and, you know, we're friendly to our neighbors.
It's also a 15-minute warning. We have to stop. I just wanted to
Yeah.
let everyone know.
I agree. Is there any other questions for our esteemed guests?
What was the suggestion?
Do you have any recommendations? I mean, I know you're on the PTTF and you're dealing with this all the time. So do you have any, you know, solutions or ideas that, you know, with respect to the existing zones or other ideas, out of the box suggestions that might, you know, we should consider in thinking about what we have and what we might have?
No, we spent years with the staff, thousands of hours trying to come up with a solution. It's unfortunately, fortunately you can blame me, deputy. When I was the deputy chief, I proposed we need to do something. I was looking towards the future and knowing the building was coming in here, and I wanted to tackle this project long before we got to the point where we are now. And we've tried to come up with a bunch of different solutions. We're an older town with a smaller downtown, and I don't think there is any, like, snap of the fingers, easy solution. I really don't. All I can say is whatever you come up with, whatever the select board decides on and change the parking rules regulations, just make it easy for us, the easier for us to enforce it, and the better regulated it is, the easier it is for us to kind of get this.
We've heard suggestions of getting different types of stickers throughout the downtown, like, you know, a resident sticker for just downtown residents, and it's just hard to enforce, especially if we only have one person that does that. So we just like an easy system, like the chief said, but it's very hard where we have a downtown with residential and businesses, and trying to make both happy has been a hard job. So if you could solve it, I would love it. But
And if you have any more questions, please forward them off to either one of us. Specific questions, like I said, the deputy chief, this is far more her expertise because she was the traffic and safety officer and then the lieutenant in charge of the traffic and safety officer. So this is definitely more her forte than me. But if you have a question about budgeting and doing different things, that kind of be my end of it. So just, we're here to help out. We want this to succeed. I'd even say more than you do. So it's because we've been dealing with this I've been dealing with this since 2016 when I made deputy. And I've been really trying to kind of.
And our staff, we've thought of everything.
Yeah.
What big private lots can we ask to use and bus people? It's just, It's really hard to come up with a great solution that would just solve every problem in one.
And staff has come up with some wonderful ideas. Julie, Erin, Andrew come up with one of theirs about like, well, if a bank's closed, can the restaurant use that lot at night? And then, well, the bank says, we asked and our insurance company said, no, don't do it, it's a liability for us. Well, we've tried to think out of the box. We really have. And we've, some of the ideas we come up with, like, that sounds great, and then some insurance company squashes it on us, so. No offense if anybody's in the insurance business, I'm just, we've
Yeah,
tried.
we
We've really
think of
worked with
that as a
staff, so
problem.
yeah, we've been,
So we have to create spots out of thin air.
If you build it,
Yes.
they will come.
Yep.
Yes.
Reduce the demand.
Is there any kind of zones or other things that you think we don't need? I mean, if you think about the demand, it sounds like most of it is in the couple of parking lots we're talking about. Aside from that, is there any reason you can't sort of let the demand flow to where it needs to be? I mean, do we have to have all these extra zones? And it seems like you're saying, don't give us too much more work because it's hard to enforce, but you're also, I understand that you're saying, you'll do your job to try to regulate it as much as you can.
I can just say that if you regulate it, it's easier to enforce. But if you start creating like 14 different zones where like, okay, if you're, this is a Chapin Ave sticker and only Chapin Ave residents can park here, that definitely gets a lot harder for us. And then also managing the parking program, because we actually my admin manages the parking program for us. It becomes harder and harder for her to try to figure out what we're doing and get the stickers out there. And I don't know. I wish if this was an easy problem, we would have had to solve.
Yeah, I don't
5
know
years.
what anybody that's like us does for as far as like on Chapin Ave or Gould Street or somewhere that has a home in front of it, but we also allow public, all day with an employee pack. I'm not sure if other residents, so we give out, obviously, as everyone knows, free stickers to anybody who has a regulation in front of their house. I don't know that how that works for other towns. It's something we can look into. I obviously think it's nice to our residents that live there, but.
Do you know how the other towns around us enforce these time limit zones?
I think it's,
The same, I mean, you see Stoneham a lot, they're very busy downtown, they have a parking enforcement officers, actually their crossing guards become the parking enforcement officers after work, so that works great for them.
but their schools are also
Right,
more,
they're right there,
they're right there, so it's easier for them to do that.
And then the next
Meters in
town,
Stoneham?
what is it?
Do they have a lot of meters in Stoneham?
They have
I
some
don't-
in certain
don't
areas,
remember.
yeah.
But then I know to try to compare towns, I feel like that look like us, you drive down to Andover and they do have the kiosk locks in the back and there's usually parking back there. But again, they don't really have the residential mix right in the mix, so it's hard to compare us to anybody that I can think of.
Residential, but.
Right.
But I think Merrill's is gone, it's been a while, but is it Meters there now?
I
I
don't
think
think
it's
so.
like,
It's meter.
Oh, is
And
it?
there's some big lots behind.
They've made a lot of lots behind the restaurants and such in Melrose.
like I said, it's been an ongoing project. Staff, we work great as a team together. We throw out different ideas and we're all coming from different perspectives. Andrew's like, I want businesses in there, and I'm like, I want easier regulation. Somebody says, I want to take care of the residents. We all we get there, but I knew this was gonna become an issue with all the building going on. And I think it's great. I'm a townie. My father grew up, went to Reading High. I love the fact we have a thriving downtown. I love to see more stuff coming in. Because when I first got in the job 26 years ago, 9 o'clock at night, Reading Center, carpets rolled up, nothing happened. I think it's great. I love the fact that you don't have to leave Reading and go to a nice restaurant, go to have a drink someplace, go see a movie. I love the fact you can do all that here, shop here, different things. I think it's great. But it comes with a cost too, and that's trying to regulate the parking.
So you guys are brainstorming on this all these years. Have you looked at finding ways to increase spots? Like for instance, right out here on the other side of this, suppose you cut into the other side, there's about 15 to 18 spots coming this way, but on the other side of, on that street, you can cut in.
Some of it, again, we try to keep green spaces and seating areas for people too, to keep the downtown attractive. There's also grants that if you have the green space, you can get money for other things, so to take away the green space kind of affects other parts of it. Part of it is ADA regulations with the sidewalks and crosswalks, so it gets very.
Right. Has that been looked into though, for that particular spot right there?
Right there in front of us?
Yeah.
part of me.
Not that I'm aware of, from
Not
like
that-
an engineering study point of view, no.
But you do run into stuff like, for example, the town common, I believe, and I could be making this all up. I'm pretty sure that the town common is like historically significant and you can't actually do changes out there without permission.
Right.
This might be part of it because this building is historically significant. So I don't know, Dan, to be honest with you.
Another thing that I think about, like down by where I am, there's some curb cut in there, and coming this way, I think it's two lanes. What if you were able to make it one lane and do angle parking on that side of 28? I mean, it would increase spaces quite significantly. But again, I don't know. Obviously, it's a study that would need to be done, because I know sometimes traffic will bottleneck.
Yeah,
If you go through Wakefield, it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, we could have the engineering look at it.
We're open to anything. I'm not a fan of Main Street being one lane.
Right, yeah.
From a public safety perspective, I'm actually not a fan of the road
But didn't it
diet.
used to be 2 lanes going both ways?
Why?
Oh, yes.
Why are you not afraid of the road, or not a fan of the road diet?
It is, accidents
It's
have,
been very unsafe. People are driving down that center lane for a long period of time, and they don't know how to use it correctly.
I've heard of Amazon parking in that center lane.
Right, and we have delivery trucks that just stop there, like, it's just not safe in our opinion. It has not lowered crashes for us at all.
At all.
It's actually caused more, rollover accidents.
and instead of it's really bottleneck traffic, and it's, now you get people, like when you come out of the square now, I don't know if you've seen it, cars are jogging for position to get in front of each other, has caused some more road rage incidents and stuff. It's,
My wife had that problem right in the, just, it's not a stress, it adds to a lot of stress.
and we are seeing people driving down the road doing 28 miles an hour, and it's 40, and cars
Right,
pull in the
that's-
left-hand lane and pass, and it's caused a lot of issues with that, and it's caused more traffic enforcement issues for us, and it's also, my concern was that it's increased significantly the traffic on Pearl Street, Havel Street, and all the streets that run side. So I'm not a fan of taking that heavy of a traffic road. That's just from a public safety perspective, that's,
Back to your question too, I know that our town engineers have done some studies. The engineering part that you're talking about costs a lot of money. I know, Ryan has been looking into Haven Street and kind of reconfiguring, see if we can get different parking. It's just, to do these things costs a lot of money.
I think we're getting close to,
3 minutes left.
we're getting close to our time. Any last questions?
it's the first meeting I've been to, actually, it's like 30, we're done.
I propose that we do that every time we have a time limit
Yeah.
and stick
I-
to it, like 2 hours
No
maybe.
problem. I got an 8:00 call, so.
Cause the,
Seriously, if you have questions, please email us, we'll get back. If we don't know, we'll try to find it for you. But just keep in mind, some of the data you're looking for, it's because of the split in the stickers, we just don't have it, and that's.
I was just trying to, and I think what you gave us was terrific. This presentation was phenomenal.
Appreciate
Really
your time.
appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll have a ongoing dialogue as we try to work through the stuff that you've already worked through.
And if you come up with suggestions, please run it by us, because maybe it's something that maybe we have a different perspective on it, like for enforcement side, and yes, we can.
Thanks very much. I guess any
Thank you.
motions to adjourn, anything else from the
Then
public?
If I could just let you guys know that your meeting on the 29th, Economic Development Director Erin Schaefer will be the lead staff for that one, as we're trying to get different departments and people in for you guys. So Economic Development will be here on your meeting for the 29th if you wish to tailor any questions or
That's a
needs to
7
them.
o'clock start time?
That is a 7 o'clock start time, no specific end time.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
At 6:27.
Thanks, John.
28.